Occupational wellness. Occupational wellness is how we look at our roles and how we generate income. Do we love what we do? But here, more importantly, is why do you do what you do? If we just get caught up in what we do, it's going to get really boring. It's going to get frustrating. But it's finding the why in what we do. Because when we can find that why, regardless if it's your own business, you work for somebody, it may not be your dream job, but yet you can always find some why to what you're doing. When you can operate from that why, that's what makes this powerful to move yourself forward. Finally, we have environmental wellness. Now, we're not talking about climate change. We're not talking about the weather here. We're talking about your environment, where you live, your car, your workplace. If your car and your workplace and your home is cluttered. Now, I'm not saying if you're messy doesn't mean that you're necessarily cluttered and up here and you're operating in the past and the future. But more than likely, when there's disorganization, there's usually disorganization up here. This is out of alignment. That could be your emotional well-being. But if we have some organization in our lives, we have a plan, we have disciplines and habits that we do to keep on track, and we find some organization in our homes, in our cars, in our workplaces, we tend to be now shifting more to interdependency, operating from a growth mindset. So as you can see, that when we have these 8 pillars of wellness, it's not about balance. That's one thing I'd like to share with everyone. Think about balance. Think about a seesaw on its axis point. If it were like this, balanced perfectly on its axis point, that would require an enormous amount of energy to keep it balanced like that. Now, imagine you putting that pressure on yourself to be balanced every day. Now you're striving for perfection. That's a form of codependency. That's not going to serve you. When we can strive for harmony, where it's teetering now on its axis point, harmony is a word in place of balance. There's going to be some days and some weeks where we put a little bit more into our work. There'll be some days and weeks we put a little bit more into our personal lives, but it's all about harmony. So it's about progress over perfection. So you don't have to put that pressure. It's got to be balanced, perfectly balanced every day. That's something that's going to be very difficult and almost impossible to do each and every day. But you can see here that the 8 pillars of wellness are all possible to really not only maintain, but to sustain our quality of mind, to live and operate our businesses in a different way, to be the example and be more resourceful in how we can move things forward, and helping other people to do the same in their lives. So just like I'm sharing with you here today, I'm just being the example. I'm being a resource. You get to decide what this means to you. Either you're going to say, hey, this is great, and there's some things I'd like to take away and make some changes. And then you might not agree, and that's okay. Because again, life is a choice. Business is a choice. We're all people. We all see things in different ways. It's choosing what works for us that's going to improve the quality of our lives. Again, every human being is just looking at other people. We're not looking. The key is not to become like somebody else. It's to model yourself to see if somebody's moving their life forward. As an extraordinary leader, you could do the same, what that means to you. So that's what we're sharing here today. So let's see how this all impacts ourselves as leaders. So before we start, silence isn't empty. It's full of answers. These are some familiar faces that most people have seen, like Deepak Chopra, Mark Cuban, Mark Zuckerberg, LeBron James. These are all people that are in the public eye that people maybe realize or don't realize that practice what we've talked about today. They incorporate this into their lives. Their success is a byproduct of how they think to be, to become, to do, and have different and better results. Does that mean that if you do the same, you're going to have the same level of success as these people? No, there's no guarantees in life, but that's up to you. Whatever you decide, whatever you're willing to do to whatever success means to you. But just to show that these are human beings just like you and I. They're no different. They may possess certain talents that you don't have because you have certain talents they don't have. It's all about maximizing the things that you're good at and offsetting the things that you're not with resources and other systems that allow you to focus on how you can give more value. So let's take a look at how this can impact our different leadership styles. Now, these are not the only leadership styles. I only listed a few just because these are more of the common leadership styles that we see around today. Now, there's others out there. And when you look at coach, visionary, and servant, what would you feel from those styles of leadership? What would that be operating more from? A place of interdependency or codependency? Again, it's never going to be 100% to either one, but where do you think it would lean more toward? Coaching, visionary, and servant, what do you feel like would be more of an interdependent or codependent? Somebody says interdependent. Absolutely. So coaching, when you're using a coaching leadership style, it's regardless of title, it's leading by your example and being a resource like we shared before. We are simply, empowering people through that example and through that resourcefulness to do for themselves, to own their own role and duties and be responsible for it. And then come together that we can complement each other with those roles and duties at a higher level in an interdependent versus codependent way. That creates a better workplace environment, brings higher team engagement into place, leads to more productivity, efficiency, and of course, more profitability. Now, it sounds all easy to do, right? But that's not the case. These things take time, but coaching can be quite effective. Visionary is quite similar, except in this case, the visionary sees the results that they're looking to obtain, but they're not keeping themselves there. They see it, it's in the distance, but they bring themselves back into the moment, trusting the process of controlling what they can, letting go of what they can't. And each day, each week, each month, each quarter, each year, that's leading them to that vision or those results that they're seeking. It's a byproduct of that. Servant can be looked upon in two different ways. We're not just giving to people and doing for people. A servant is very similar to coaching, that you are still serving yourself. Because how can you serve somebody else if you don't serve yourself? If you don't fill up your own cup, how can you be the example to help somebody else fill theirs? You're in this place, you're giving something you don't even have from an empty cup. That's what a pleaser and enabler will do. And that doesn't serve anyone. So servant is very similar to coaching. When you look at autocratic, democratic, laissez-faire, bureaucratic, autocratic and bureaucratic are very similar styles. Usually that like there's somebody that's from the top down, and you have different titles and this could also be found in homes and how families are raised and relationships. One is dominant, one is not. But nonetheless, what happens in those types of environments, in some cases, they're very useful. In the military, where you have to follow a command or an order, it's very important that we are operating from one of those styles, where a coaching style may not be effective. But overall, what may happen in those environments is there could be a breakdown in communication. There could be a lack of trust. There can be codependency can exist because we're dependent upon others, what they're going to do, and so on. So I'm not saying that autocratic and bureaucratic are leadership styles that have kind of run its course, but just be mindful that in certain situations they're still very effective, but in many other cases may not be, especially with our newer generations of millennials and Gen Z that are not going to respond favorably to that style of leadership. So as leaders, if we're not adapting to change, which mental toughness allows us to do, if we're a baby boomer, if we're a Gen X like myself, and we're very set in our ways and how we view the world because we grew up in a different time, we have to be very mindful of that. Maybe making shifts in how we lead can impact people in a more positive versus a negative way. And laissez-faire is simply, that people operate on their own. These are people that have experience. There's very little to no supervision required. But a great leader, regardless of these leadership styles, is not someone that manages people. They manage processes, systems, resources. They lead by example. They lead through resources to help people help themselves. Instead of managing people, they manage the resources and systems instead allowing people to manage themselves and to lead themselves. Now, does that always work? Not in every situation. But if we're going to create more interdependency through the 8 pillars of wellness in our workplaces, in our homes, in our communities, these are the things that over time can make these changes. It takes time. So here's an example of an extraordinary leader. Now, this is Howard Schultz. See, when Howard Schultz started Starbucks, it wasn't just about coffee. Coffee was obviously the product. What he was creating was an experience that he desired to have that he wasn't getting in the workplace when he worked at other organizations. When he saw that his father was struggling in working for a company where they provided no benefits. And he said to himself that he was looking to create an experience, not only for the people that would come in and buy coffee and other things, but looking to create that experience with his staff, the people that worked in Starbucks. Because without them having a great experience and really being part of the culture, being interdependent in a way that they were included in every aspect of what was happening, how could they be the example for people coming in to create to help them create an experience for themselves? See, Starbucks was a place where you can come in and meet people, do your work, have a meeting over a cup of coffee, and a pastry or whatever. And it all started with how the people that actually work there that create that experience. Zappos is another example of the online shoe retailer, why they are top 5 in customer service each year. Because it's not just about selling women's shoes or men's shoes. It's about the experience. And it starts with what happens in the culture of that organization first. These are men and women that in these organizations that have adopted everything that we're talking about here today, and how this foundation from the 8 pillars of wellness and mental toughness plays out in their communication, their leadership, their actions, their behavior, the ability to take risks and follow through with action, how that helps bring people together to lead by example, regardless of roles, to do bigger and better things. So how do you choose your leadership style? So take a look at some of these questions here. And these questions are just things that you can do for yourself when you get a copy of the slide. So it's looking at, what do you value more, goals or relationships? Do you believe in structure or freedom of choice? Would you rather make a decision on your own or collectively as a team or a group? Do you focus on short or long-term goals? What does motivation come from, empowerment or direction? What does a healthy team look like to you? So when you can answer these questions and be honest, you can determine what type of leadership style resonates best with you. Could be coach, servant, it could be visionary, it could be autocratic, bureaucratic. Some people that if you were in the military or came from a military family, that might be what is that bureaucratic, autocratic style. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just knowing that in certain other environments that may not work. And you have to be open to adapt to the change, which the 8 pillars of wellness and how we think can allow you to adapt in those situations. You're not conforming, you're just adapting. Just like, even if a person that comes from a coaching leadership style would have to adapt in a military type setting, if that were the case, that we can adapt to those situations. Just knowing that leadership styles are fluid. You can have more than one style. There might be where you're using one style in one situation and you're using another in another situation. So, but just getting an idea what style that you come from that you can use to determine what style best resonates with you and your team. And then of course, overall as an organization, how does that line up with your organization? This is a little checklist for everybody. We won't have time to go through everything here, but this is something that you could, use maybe twice a month. You can look at where are you spending your time, percentage of time in these particular behavioral areas, and what could optimally be best to realign the time you spend so you find that alignment to be more in check, to lead, to be a better leader by example and resource. Now just know that this is going to change. But when you can, use this and answer those questions, these are the things that will allow you to find a more alignment to lead in a more extraordinary and effective way. So what are some signs of an ineffective leadership? Well, when you look at some of these bullet points here, lack of team chemistry, when we communicate based on assumption and speculation, low employee or client retention, micromanagement, codependent work environment. We don't have any values, no leadership vision. We lead from expectations and not from the process, like we talked about before. These are the things that, again, that ineffective leadership can lead to codependency. It can lead to a breakdown in communication. It can lead to toxicity if left unchecked over time. This can be found in your own families, your relationships, your neighborhood, your community, your businesses. So the question is, what can we be doing to take what we've learned today that we can change this around, where we can bring people together, where we can communicate in a very specific, clear, and concise manner, where the result of where employees stay longer, they desire to be part of the team, and you're operating from values, those shared values, and how we connect unconsciously. So it's determining your values. How do they align with other people? They don't have to be the same, but you can find where there's those shared values that you can connect on. How does that roll up to your organization or any situation that you're in? This will dictate how we communicate to people, how we behave around certain people, how we understand certain people, especially in the world of equity, diversity, and inclusion now, which will also be a big, big part of any growth in any type of group of people coming together. So let's take a look at another way of leading as an extraordinary leader. All these things that we are discussing here is what can actually help change an environment. And how that can change is we can go from any type of environment where there's codependency, where there's a lack of communication, where there's a lack of leadership, where there's a place where we're not operating from shared values, from a place where we're not thinking from a growth mindset. These are things that, if by looking at mental toughness and the 8 pillars of wellness and us owning that as our own responsibility, using resources like you have here today through the Della Leaders Club, giving you the opportunity to tap into this information. These are the things where now you can be the instrument of change. Doesn't matter what your title is, what your role is, it's becoming that for yourself, giving yourself that gift. And when you can play a part in helping others to do the same, this is what happens over time to build winning teams. This is what happens to build, thriving interdependent work environments, thriving and interdependent family structures and communities. It's not about what we have to do for each other. It's about how we complement each other by owning those roles and duties, being responsible, leveraging our strengths, and giving our 100% best to any situation. These are the things that characterize itself into what we become an extraordinary leader. I wanted to leave it off right here to see if anybody has any questions what we shared today. I'd be happy to address that. And I want to thank everyone for being here for this time. And any questions, feel free to put it in the chat box, or if you send it in the Q&A section, somebody will read it off and we will make sure that we address it for you. But thank you everybody for being here and being a part of the process today. And I thank everybody here. So here's a question. How to maintain mental toughness in a depressing work environment? That very, very good. It's again, creating, having resources like this, whether you have a online workshop or you have written resources like articles, blogs, things that you can share with people. See, people are conditioned not to be told what to do. But if you can share with people, be the example of saying, hey, I can understand that you're not feeling good today or you're in a tough place. I've been there. I understand. Here's something that I did that helped me. I don't know if it'll help you, but if you're open, I'd be happy to share it with you. In certain organizations, they have what we call employee assistance providers. EAPs is the acronym. Almost every EAP has a wellness component where, as an employee, you can tap in 24/7 anonymously into that EAP to pull down information around emotional well-being, physical well-being, all different types of services. It's at your fingertips, but you'd be shocked that only a very small percentage of people actually tap into that information for them and their families at any duration of time they spend at that company. They don't even take advantage of it. So as a company, making sure we stress the importance of that, having awareness sessions like this, having resources available to share, and you being that example on a consistent basis, those are the things that will help make some shifts. It would also determine that there might be some people that are so toxic that no matter what happens, they're not going to change, that they're better off not being part of the team. They might be better off somewhere else. So it also allows you to understand that, hey, we got to move on from this person or people. So again, you can't change people, but you can inspire people through your example and your resourcefulness. So it's going to be the consistency of a combination of all those things that can help make those changes over time. All right, I think we addressed every question. If anybody has anything, let me know. And I think here we go. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Christopher, for such a great session. And it was a pleasure to listen to your talk. Highly inspirational and perfectly pitched as always. Many thanks for your insights, inputs, and supporting DLC, the world's first business platform. And I'm sure people will definitely take advantage of it. And many thanks to you for once again.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you, everyone. And I hope if anything that you get from this today is just, take whatever you can take that you feel resonates with you. Just allow yourself to change, and magic happens when you let go of the control you can't control.
I'm sure. Thanks a lot once again. And thank you everyone for signing up for the DLC workshop.
Thank you.